As the tale goes, the Wendigo was once a lost hunter. During a brutally cold winter, this man's intense hunger drove him to cannibalism. After feasting on another human's flesh, he transformed into a crazy man beast, roaming the forest in search of more people to eat. The story of the Wendigo comes from Algonquin Native American folklore, and the exact details vary depending on who you ask. Some people who have claimed to encounter the beast say it's a relative of Bigfoot, but other reports compare the Wendigo to a werewolf instead. Since the Wendigo is said to be a cold weather creature, most sightings have been reported in Canada, as well as colder northern states in the US, like Minnesota. At the turn of the 20th century, the Algonquin tribes blamed many unsolved disappearances of people on Wendigo attacks. For being an insatiable predator, the Wendigo is definitely not the largest or most muscular beast out there. Though he is said to be almost 15 feet tall, his body is often described as immaculate. Perhaps this can be attributed to the notion that he is never satisfied with his cannibalistic urges. Obsessed with hunting for new victims, he is forever and forever hungry until he's eating another person. According to legends of the Nani Valley, a native author named Basil H. Johnston once described the Wendigo in his masterwork, and he quotes, "The Wendigo was jaunt to the point of emaciation. Its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out over its skin. Its complication, the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into the sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave, while lip it had were serrated and bloody, unclean and suffering from the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption." According to Nathan Carlson, it's also been said that the Wendigo has large, sharp claws and massive eyes like an owl. However, some other people simply describe the Wendigo as a skeleton-like figure with ash-toned skin. But no matter which version sounds the most plausible, this is obviously not a creature you'd want to run into on a hike. Different versions of the Wendigo legend say different things about his speed and agility. Some claim he is unusually fast and can endure walking for long periods of time, even in harsh winter conditions. Others say he walks in a more haggard manner, as if he is falling apart, but speed wouldn't be a necessary skill for a monster of this nature. Unlike other terrifying carnivores, the Wendigo doesn't rely on pursuing his prey in order to capture and eat it. Rather, one of his creepiest traits is his ability to mimic human voices. He uses this skill to lure people in and draw them away from civilization. Once they're isolated in the desolation depths of the wilderness, he attacks them and then feasts on them. The Algonquin people say that during the turn of the 20th century, a large number of their people went missing. The tribes attributed many of the mysterious disappearances to the Wendigo, thus calling him the spirit of lonely places. Another rough translation of Wendigo is the evil spirit that devours mankind. This translation is rather to yet another version of the Wendigo that has the power to curse humans by possessing them. Once he has infiltrated their minds, he can turn them into Wendigos as well, instilling upon them a similar lust for human flesh. One of the most infamous cases is the story of Swift Runner, a Native American who murdered and ate his whole family during the winter of 1879. According to Animal Planet, Swift Runner claimed to be possessed by a Wendigo spirit. At the time of the murders, he was hanged for his crime. Frighteningly enough, there were quite a few other stories about these spirits supposedly possessing people in communities stretching from northern Quebec to the Rockies. Many of these reports were shockingly similar to the Swift Runner case. Whether you believe the Wendigo lurks in the woods at night or not, this is not just another boogeyman story meant to scare people for no reason. It also has a historical significance for many Indigenous communities. The legend of the Wendigo has long been associated with real-life problems. It's also linked to the many culture tabs against these negative actions and behaviors. Basically, the word Wendigo can also function as a symbol for gluttony and the image of excess, as Basil Johnston has written. The idea of turning Wendigo is a very real possibility when the word refers to self-destruction rather than literally becoming a monster in the forest. But ironically enough, these stories might actually represent the indigenous people's response to the horrific violence unleashed on them by non-active people. In fact, many believe that the concept of a Wendigo only developed after the native people had contact with the Europeans. But what about those scary Wendigo stories that supposedly affected real people? Some also argue that Wendigo stories, especially those involving the Wendigo, are linked to stress within the Native American communities. The local tension leading up to such accusations may even be comparable to the fear that preceded the Salem witch trials. However, in that case of Native American communities, most of the stress was due to a dwindling amount of resources, not to mention the extermination of food in the area. Under those circumstances, who could blame them for having a fear of starvation? Just about the only thing scarier might be what one would do if the starvation became too much to handle. The vast majority of supposed Wendigo sightings happened between the 1800s and 1920s. Few reports to the creature have surfaced since then, but every so often, an alleged sighting emerges. Most recent in 2019, mysterious howls in the Canadian wilderness led some to question whether they were caused by the infamous man-beast. One hiker who was present said, "I've heard many different animals in the world, but nothing like this." Much like other legendary beasts, the Wendigo remains a fixture in pop culture in modern times. The culture has been referenced and sometimes even depicted in a variety of hit television shows, including Supernatural, Grimm, and Charmed. Internationally enough, there are even a couple of lakes today named after the beast, including a lake Wendigo in Minnesota and a Wendigo lake in Wisconsin. But those who believe in physical Wendigo think he might still be out there in the woods, and underneath that terrifying flesh-eating demon, there might still be a human who was once just a hungry hunter.